Here are some highlights of this program.
Hello everybody.
Welcome to Brainstorm exclusive interview.
Our education should be corrected, adapted, and updated.
Live better, they can send their children to school because they can interact with their authorities.
Mechanics, electricity, computer science, innovation, yeah.
And we know that this brainstorm.
Yourself after watching this interesting program, notice the final statement made by our notable guest, a brand new one.
Hello everybody and welcome to Brainstorm Broadcast. Today, no country in the world can do business or trade without export and import. How these both concepts, export and import, affect a national economy? In today's theme, we're going to address the issue on economic growth through export or import. And we're going to find out many things about possibilities with import or export in a given country. We have a friend who will join us here, whose name is Joe Badibanga, who is a sworn translator and economist. Hello, Joe, and welcome to this program.
Hello, Mr. Tombi. It's a great pleasure to be on your show.
Yeah, delighted to welcome you for the very first time on Brainstorm.
All right, that's great. That's good. That's it.
Economic growth is through export or import. So we want to know before we begin, when it comes to economic growth, what are export and imports?
Well, basically, exports is the selling of goods, of domestic goods and services to foreign countries. Rather, import is the buying of foreign goods and services. So this is the distinction between both concepts.
As you know, that the main focus is on export and import. So we want to know how can export or import affect a national economy?
Well, from an economic standpoint, export is, exports constitutes a source of income because the more the country is engaged in export, the more the country is going to get more in terms of revenue. Rather, import is when the level of import is higher than the level of export, it's a sort of loss in the balance. It's going to turn out into a negative balance of trade.
Okay, we know that any country, if we want to do a business or some trade, they need to resort to export or import, right? This following video will highlight the need for countries to do trades. So please take a look and we'll be back.
Countries engage in international trade based on the logical saying of no man is an island. Countries trade to benefit from interacting with other countries. Countries in isolation have to contend with being self-sufficient and having a lesser variety of goods. With international exchanges of goods and services, countries get to enjoy a wider variety of goods that may offer better quality. Besides that, the key reason for trade is that by trading goods, countries can afford to specialize in producing only some items that they're relatively better at producing. Trade means each country does not need to produce everything, but just focus its scarce resources on what it produces more efficiently, or what it has a comparative advantage in. The country hence focuses all its resources in what it's best at producing, mass producing for the whole world, and exchanging these for what it's not so great at producing. On a global scale, this means that the world becomes a global production hub, with each country specializing in producing what it's best at. The world's scarce resources are hence put to their best use for all our wants, allowing more to be produced and hence consumed globally. This is the main advantage of trade that is spelt out in the law of comparative advantage. Plus, with mass production, there are cost savings as firms benefit from bulk purchases and specialized manpower, or known as economies of scale. So international trade really is a big step forward for the world in increasing its efficiency. That's why we have countries signing trade deals to foster more cross-border transactions that tap on each other's resources.
So, what are some key factors leading to export in a country?
Well, the major factor, up to me, is the comparative advantage. Because the comparative advantage simply means that the cost difference in production. Because, and the comparative advantage is determined by the natural endowment and the technology. So when you take, for instance, DRC is naturally a rich country. We have 80 million of arable and fertile land. It's a sort of natural environment, and it can allow the country to be a major producer in such or such culture. So it's exactly the first one I've just quoted, the comparative advantage, or it can also be technology, because you see, for instance, when it comes to export, concerning the case of DRC, we too much, let's say, we too much dependent on the mining sector, because we are endowed naturally with the strategic nowadays they talk about strategic mineral, cobalt and copper. So, but the problem is that we are not fully equipped when it comes to technology. So we sell them, let's say, cobalt and copper in crud state, and then they, let's say, in Western countries, they are advanced when it comes to technology. It's a sort of since they are advanced when it comes to technology, they refine that, and they can make phones from it, and they will export, they will sell to the rest of the world. This is exactly, let's say, this shows clearly that it is the technology, let's say, advancements in technology and comparative advantage that allows or that can foster export.
And then when you look at other countries exporting goods and services to others, but when we come back here in Congo, is there any link between export and productivity? Because we want to focus as well on productivity. Is there any link between export and productivity?
Sure. Export is a sort of stimulus for productivity. A country or an economy, when it is engaged in export, let's say it ends up making what we call economies of scale. Means the country is not going to meet only the domestic demand when it comes to such and such products or goods or service, but the country is going to produce to meet also the demand in the international market. So you see that the level of productivity is going to be increased. Means that they are not going to produce for a small scale. They're going to produce for a larger scale, because they want to supply or to provide the rest of the countries who are maybe in shortage of that product with the specific products. And this is how export can contribute to productivity. But on the let's say on top of that, export can be also a stimulus for full employment, because if you want to let's say, enhance the level of productivity, you have to hire more employees. So this means that the level of unemployment is going to be reduced if, let's say, thanks to exports, because it's a stimulus. You will need more, let's say, more staff, more labor in order to increase the level of productivity.
Yes, I can see the link between export and productivity. So you think that this could have a positive impact on the purchasing power? It means that when there is much productivity due to or as a result of exports, which is more, I think, it is as far advancing, and it helps that we can have also a level of high productivity. You think that can have a bearing on purchasing power? If so, how?
Sure. Based on the law of offer and demand, if, for instance, I mean, thanks to productivity, we produce, there is a high level of let's say, productivity. They produce a lot of goods and services across sectors. I think that the competitiveness of goods and services in the market is going to regulate price, and price will be affordable for people, and in so doing, it contributes to the general welfare.
Okay, so now let me give an example. DRC is exporting goods or services to other countries. So we're going to do that through a local currency or foreign currency to make things develop or economically do well. Which currency should be used, local or foreign currency?
Can you come back again with your question?
It means that, for instance, Congo is exporting goods and services to other countries. Which currency would be used? Because other countries want to buy products from Congo. Which currency, which money would they use? Foreign or Congolese franc, in order to do that kind of business?
So generally, when it comes to export and import, they use a dominating currency. And in the case of DRC and the rest of the world, it's especially the US dollar, which is a dominating currency. So if you want to, transactions are being made when it comes to trade, export, either exports or imports, transactions are made in terms of US dollars.
Okay. All right, that's good. But most of the time we hear from the news that Congo economically is doing well, this country is doing well. So sometimes it's hard to understand simply because there are two technical economic terms used, so it's hard for others who are not expert to understand. So can you try to sum up in simple way the law of the offer and demand to make people understand how we can have a high cost of products, of items, and lower as well, to explain that law of offer and demand?
So the law of offer demand simply means that the more there is demand in the market, means that the prices are going to follow the trend. The prices are going to be high. But when there is lower demand, means that there is a higher level of supply, and that's going to subsequently prices are going to be down. So the purpose is to reach a certain equilibrium, or let's say to balance really the price, so that it can be beneficial for consumers and also for producers.
Yeah, there is another concept that can come into play, GDP. Where I want to know if, to what extent does export boost the value of local currency when we look at GDP, gross domestic product. So how can it be done as far as export is concerned?
So as far as exports is concerned, the GDP can boost the local currency through production. It means the GDP, to break it down, to break the concept, let's say the acronym GDP, it stands for gross domestic products. It means that different. It measures the level of production in the country. So to better or to improve the level of our GDP, we have to I mean, there should be some investments across sectors. When I refer to the primary sector, which is agriculture and manufacturing, the secondary sector, and the tertiary sector, which is the service. So if there is a higher, let's say, a high level of investment, means it's a huge accumulation of investment in across the different sectors I've just mentioned. Then the GDP is going to grow per annum, and we can talk about, if you compare this period to the previous period, we can say that there is an advancement. There is what we call, let's say, an economic growth.
Okay, thank you. We want to remind you that the theme of our talk show is economic growth through export or import. So we want to know the implication or development of GDP, gross domestic product. So through this video, please watch to take some insights, and we'll be back.
Remember that exports are goods and services produced domestically but sold abroad, and imports are goods and services produced abroad but sold here. Because imports are produced elsewhere, those goods are counted in that country's GDP. So, a cell phone produced in China is counted in China's GDP. They can't be counted twice. That is, they can't be counted in our GDP. Let's go back to our equation. GDP equals C plus I plus G plus the sum of X minus M. Now let's focus on the last part of the equation, X minus M. This part is known as net exports because it is the result of subtracting imports from exports. You'll notice in our equation that all the numbers are added to form GDP except M, imports. The M variable is subtracted from GDP because GDP measures domestic production. In fact, domestic, which means it was produced inside a particular country, is in the name. Imports aren't produced domestically, so subtracting them is necessary. But does buying an import actually subtract from domestic production?
Actually, no. It's important to realize that the M variable, imports, is there for accounting purposes. The imports part of the equation is there to subtract out goods that were originally counted as consumption, investment, or government spending, but were imported. We subtract them to make sure we aren't including the value of imported goods in the GDP number. Here's an example. Let's say you buy a car produced outside the U.S., and that car cost $30,000. When you bought the car, it was added to GDP as C, or consumption spending. Then, because it was imported, the $30,000 is subtracted, so they cancel each other out. So the net effect of buying an import is no change in U.S. GDP. In other words, the M variable is there to make sure we're only counting goods produced domestically. But make sure you notice that buying an import does not subtract from GDP. Knowing this can be useful because many goods are not purely domestic. For example, let's say you bought a $30,000 car that was assembled in the U.S. but used $5,000 in imported parts. In this case, the net effect on GDP is $25,000. The net imports part of the equation is also helpful for discussing the balance of trade, which is comparing the value of the goods we export to the value of goods we import. If we export more than we import, the balance of trade is positive. If we import more than export, the balance of trade is negative. But don't automatically assume that a negative trade balance is bad for the economy. There's a larger story here that we don't have time to discuss in this video.
So what could be at the root of inflation, import, export, or scarcity of foreign currency?
Well, as far as the topic is concerned, imports and exports, I think that imports could be the source of inflation, because inflation is due to various factors, a range of factors. But with regard to the topic we're talking about, I think that inflation it can be sparked or triggered by the higher level of imports. And when in an economy you have a higher level of import, means that the country or the economy is exposed to global shocks, or when there is international downturn of prices, or maybe there is when you take, for instance, in 2019, COVID-19, and the war in Ukraine. For instance, Ukraine is a big supplier of wheat. It means that those countries will have shortage. In terms of the production of wheat, countries who are being supplied with wheat, they're going to register a shortage, and they might that might let's say cause an increase in terms of the cost of the production, and thereby increase the price of bread, for instance.
Okay, so as an expert or as an economist, we want to know more, because we don't understand actually what happens. What is the exchange rate based on export or import in a country, for instance?
Well, the exchange rate, in fact, is the ratio of the balance, in fact, of a broad price index of goods and services we export or we sell to the rest of the world, compare it to the broad price index of goods and services we buy from the rest of the world, from foreign countries.
Okay, so in addition to what our friend on the platform, or guest on the platform, is explaining things about economic issue, we want to find out more on this video about experts, a key to maybe develop economic development. Please watch this video and we'll be back.
I'll be meeting with Senator Schumer and Gillibrand, Congresswoman Maloney. I'm going to tell them what I believe, and we have to move this country forward. We have to move it forward economically, and the key is exports, because if we look at the other elements of GDP, consumer spending, government spending, company spending, investments, it's not there. There's not enough there. We have to compete with the rest of the world. You know, our middle class drives business, all right? Our middle class is dropping in size just because I have gray hair, all right? The rest of the world, the middle class is growing by 2 billion people. We have to access those 2 billion people, and we have to use every tool that's available.
All right. We want to know for the next idea about what can be done to change Congolese economy from being extrovert into introvert.
That's a very good question, because this is exactly, this illustrates, let's say, the state of our economy. We are heavily dependent on let's say, on imports. It means that we don't produce enough. We more import than we export. And now, when there is a, for instance, when you take, for instance, the current GDP, the mining sector account for a large share in the current GDP, and when there is burst, means that when there is a price decline in the international market, that causes our economy, we register a lower economic growth. So to change the trend, we need to diversify our economy. That means that we need to invest in let's say in growth driving sector, especially the primary sector. We have to invest in agriculture. And the problem of DRC is that agriculture is characterized by a small scale or subsistence agriculture. We have to move from small scale agriculture to a larger scale, and to do so we have to the government need to invest more in this sector, buy more machinery and equipment in order to enhance or scale up the level of productivity, and in so doing we can move from being let's say extrovert to being introvert.
Okay, thank you. We're running after time, so in 30 seconds, your last word.
So what I would like to say that we are fully, we have full potential. We are naturally endowed. We have 80 million of arable lands, and we have hydropower which has the capacity of supplying Africa, all the African continent with the electricity. We should, it would be wise for the government to invest in agriculture, and also better the infrastructure in order to help or to foster a smooth circulation of goods and services across the country. And in so doing, we can, let's say, it can rise, it can, let's say, better the level of our economy.
Joe Badibanga, thank you for joining us.
So it's a great pleasure to be on the show, Mr.
Economic growth through export or import. We learn a lot about different concepts of this talk show. We dealt with many details, things about economy, so I think it's not the end. In the upcoming days, we'll be learning much more about the same topic, economic growth, but with much more details with the same guests on the platform. Thank you for watching this program on RTNC2. Bye.
Here are some highlights of this program.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to Brainstorm exclusive interview.
Our education should be corrected, adapted, and updated.
Live better, they can send their children to school because they can interact with their authorities.
Electricity, computer science, you know, innovation, yeah.
And we know that this brainstorm.
Yourself, after watching this interesting program, notice the final statement made by our notable guest, a brand new one.